You can also go ahead and use the chat section. Please go ahead and use the chat section. I want you to do something real quick. All right. I like to do this anytime we are having a webinar. I want you guys to introduce yourself. Come to the chat section right here and introduce yourself. Please introduce yourself. All right. It is very important for you to introduce yourself. Introduce yourself. Tell us your name, where you are joining from, and tell us your skill set and what you hope to achieve during this webinar. All right. Your name. All right. Listen to me and listen very good. Your name in full, right? Where you are joining from, your skill set, and what you hope to achieve during the course of this webinar. We've had a whole lot of Nova University hangouts, and I want to tell you that this one is particularly special. All right, this one is particularly special because our resource person is a fantastic person. He's a special person that we have brought here to speak to us today. And I hope that you are here with a very open mind and a very receptive mind to get a whole lot out of this webinar. So I'm just going to do a little bit of introduction of Nova University, what we are, and our goal in Nova University. And I'm going to tell you how to join Nova University. So after we've gone through that, we're going to have maybe one or two testimonials from past Nova University students to tell us about the experience so far with Nova University, and then we are going to have Mr. Umar Abu. We are going to read Mr. Umar Abu's profile. All right, we're going to read this profile. You are going to see the amazing person that he is. Then after then, we are going to start the webinar proper. I can tell you, Mr. Umar Abu is right here. He's right here and live with us. He's right here on this call. He's listening to us right now, and I am very grateful. I told you guys something, right? Great people are always, they always keep to time. That is one of the things you have to know. If you ever want to be great in your life, time discipline is one of the most important things you have to imbibe in yourself, right? If they call a meeting 4 o'clock, make sure you are there at least 5 minutes. Make sure you are there at least 5 minutes before. Do you understand? It is very, very important. As we build skill and we try to make money, we also have to build discipline. We are young people. We are young people. We should be disciplined. It is very, very important. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to be telling you about Nova University. I'm going to be telling you about myself. I'm going to be telling you about Nova University. I'm going to be telling you about myself. I'm also going to be telling you about Nova University. Right, I'm going to be sharing my screen. Please do let me know in the chat section where you can see my screen. All right. Let me know in the chat section if you can see my screen. Let me know in the chat section if you can see my screen. Very good. I can see a lot of beautiful people in the house. I can see a whole lot of beautiful people in the house. I can see, I can see Rita, I can see Oluwafemi Adaramaja, I can see Okundari Oluwafemi Olushesi. God bless you guys. Thank you for joining today. I can see David, I can see Moromade, I can see Perry. Very good. I can really see Israel Olubayo, I can see Naomi Joy, I can see Ben, Amy Apolayo. Very good. Very, very good. Please make sure you introduce yourself. If you have not yet introduced yourself, please make sure you introduce yourself. So Nova University is an online mentorship, platform. It's a learning platform that is mentorship based. All right. I created Nova University during COVID-19. Right. A whole lot of people are down and they do not have jobs. They do not have a very good means of getting funds for themselves. And I was just graduating from the university then. The job market was very poor. It was post-COVID-19. Nobody is hiring, and a whole lot of core members like myself, because I was a copper then. A whole lot of core members like myself. Can you see this picture? I was a core member then. A whole lot of core members are very, very broke, no job, no nothing. So but I was a software engineer. At least I could build websites. I know how to work with WordPress very, very well. I know how to, I've been building websites since my university days. So I try to monetize that by helping business owners to get online, and it was a very, very good time. because a whole lot of people are embracing the online culture, building businesses online. People are embracing it. So it was a very good time for me. I made quite some money, and I decided to teach other people how to do this as well. And it went really, really good. So I decided to build a full-on mentorship platform where not just only web design will be taught, but other things, but it will be different in the sense that only people that have, the only people that have proven track record, you have to show proven track record that you are actually successful in this field before you come and mentor other people in some of these fields, in some of these skills. All right. We have expert digital marketers, expert social, expert video editors, expert freelancers, affiliate marketers, e-commerce, and so on and so forth. They are on this platform sharing their skills and sharing their knowledge, step-by-step process that they took to get to where they are. So that is what Nova University is all about. So if you want to join Nova University, please do well to come to my DM. All right. Come to my DM. I'm going to give you more details. We are a community. You understand? We organize trainings like this all the time in order to level up, in order to learn more, and in order to make ourselves better. We also have a community square. All right. We also have a community square like this where you get to meet people. Where you get to meet people, you follow yourself. You see people are submitting their assignments. This guy Israel, he submitted his assignments. People are submitting their assignments. People are, they are learning, and they are encouraging themselves, making friends, and learning together. And that is why we built this entire community. All right. So yeah, that is the little I'm going to say about Nova University. If you want to learn more and if you would like to be a part of Nova University, come to my DM. I'm going to tell you about it. Before the end of today, I'm going to be giving 80% discount to anyone that wants to join Nova University. 80% discount to anyone that wants to join Nova University. Just for today, it ends tomorrow. Just for today, if you want to be a part of us, 80% discount is yours. All right. Okay. So moving on to the next thing, right? I do not want to waste our time at all. I'm going to be having just two persons, right? Just two persons to tell us their experience with Nova University so far. These people are past students of Nova University. I don't know if there is anybody that wants to volunteer. Any Nova University student here who wants to volunteer? You can just raise your hand, right? There is the raising hand. Just raise your hand if you want to volunteer. So I have Ogundari Olufemi. Ogundari Olufemi, I'm going to be granting you access to okay. Very good. Okay, very good. I have people here. Okay, very good. Very good. I'm going to be granting you access to unmute yourself right now. So yeah, you can go ahead and unmute your microphone, Mr. Ogundari. Mr. Ogundari Oluwafemi, please unmute your microphone right now. You should be able to. Okay,
good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Olubayo Samuel, the proud owner of Nova University. And good afternoon, every other persons. Good afternoon, guest for today, Mr. Uma. Well, the journey all started in the year 2020 also. And that was when actually Mr. Olubayo Samuel started his Nova University, even before we got the Nova University social media website. So someone was just passing information around on WhatsApp. So many of us do not actually take notes of informations we do see on WhatsApp groups that we join. Some of us just join for the fun of it and not for the educational purposes of those informations being passed around. And I don't know what to tie that to. So and then being a computer science graduate, which I was, of course, what we learned in your university, in our polytechnics in Nigeria, the theoretical aspect they taught us while in school. So I was already into one business already, but not into tech. So I just found the information on the WhatsApp group and then I said, okay, let me join. And it was even free when I joined then, and it was a 4 days thorough online teaching. Then and then after which those of us who attended and then we had assignment and we did assignment and then so many of you joined there. I remember I'm going to keep it very short. So thereafter then after 2020 then I've gone ahead to last year I just finished a course, a software engineering course with ALX Africa in cooperation with Oberton School of Computer Science. Just finished that and also just finished a back-end software engineering course. I major in software engineering and now presently I'm a full stack software developer, software engineer, and also a mobile app engineer using Flutter. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Oluwafemi. Yeah, I remember when he joined Nova University, he was one of the first persons to join Nova University there back then in 2020. Right, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of your journey so far. I'm so proud of where you are right now. I'm so proud of your growth. You understand? It's a testament to the good things that has happened out of Nova University. So I'm really proud of you. Thank you very much. So we are going to take one more person, right? Please keep it as short as possible, right? We do not want to keep our resource person waiting. Encrypted. I don't know your name, right? So encrypted, you have the floor. We cannot hear you. If you're
All
saying
right.
something.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever we are. Thank you very much, Big Sam. All right. Hello. Hello. Good afternoon.
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, proceed. I can hear you.
I can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever we are. Thank you very much, Big Sam, for giving me this opportunity. All right. To testify about Nova University, I joined Nova University 2021, right? November to be precise. And since then, to be sincere, I was actually one of these. I've been. Oh, all right. So I've been part of these people that criticize WordPress, right? And I've been into this web dev with Wix and other tools. So I've also always criticize WordPress. But when I joined Nova University, Big Sam really helped us understand how to access WordPress, because when I was trying to access WordPress back then, I was using WordPress.org, so I was just discouraged there. But since then, I joined and I became a full web developer, explored other aspect as well. I've been signing in contracts back to back. Like this month, I've been able to sign 3 contracts back to back. Everybody that comes just says your work is good, trust you. They just go on like that. Thanks to Nova University, and that's it. We've been making money since then. Thank you, Big Sam. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the discounts you gave me back then. I really appreciate it. So I advise you guys to join. This is really, 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 really helpful. Since 2021, to be sincere, I've just been flowing with it. Thank you very much, Big Sam.
All right, very good. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for, if I ask people to be saying their own part of the story right now, we are not going to leave here, because I know a whole lot of people that would like to speak. I don't know a whole lot of people that would like to talk, but time is not going to permit us. And I just like to have just people say their own part, so that you will understand that people are actually changing their lives in Nova University. We are doing well, and it is a place to be. Actually, you can see from the flow of our group. You see, if you are new here in Nova University, you can see from the flow. You can see from the flow of the group chat itself. You can see that this is a no-nonsense community. Right? It is a no-nonsense community. You are not just going to learn the skill. You're also going to learn the discipline. You're also going to learn how to monetize your skill. And the people you are learning from, it is proven they have made money in that field in which they want to teach you about. Me particularly, I run a web design and marketing agency here in Lagos. My office is in Lekki. Do you understand? So I'm not teaching what I don't do. This is what I do with my life currently right now. You understand? So if you do want to join Nova University, just reach out to me at DM and I will pick you up. All right. So yeah. Now, we are going to read Mr. Umar Abu's profile right now. So Francis Adegbe will be taking us through this process. So Francis, can you hear me? Please unmute your microphone, share your screen, and take us through the reading of Mr. Abu's profile.
All right, thank you very much, sir. I want to confirm if my screen is visible enough.
Yes.
All right, welcome everyone, and I'll be very brief about this. This is just a brief profile overview of Mr. Umar Abu. Mr. Umar Abu is a software engineer, tech lead at Microsoft. In this role, he leads a team of software engineers to deliver key features to automate Microsoft's network. He is also a co-founder and a CTO of Candor, a company aimed at helping Blacks, Latinx, Indigenous, and other undeserved college students and young professionals to connect with leading professionals through booking one-on-one conversations whom they look up to empower the next generation. He designed and developed the initial product prototype and led rapid updates and development of the product. Umar is passionate about learning how things work. He enjoys learning new technologies to apply to his work and personal projects. He is also passionate about sharing software engineering knowledge with others through his social media and YouTube channel. Umar has a bachelor's degree in software engineering from Lower State University, and you can connect with him via his social media links: Instagram at Umar Codes, TikTok at Umar Code, and YouTube Umar Abu. Thank you very much.
Okay, please, I want us to give him a round of applause. This is a very, very accomplished man. Please go ahead and, just give him a round of applause. Give him a round of applause. He's a very accomplished man. He's a man that we all look up to. All right. Personally, he's a man that I look up to. I have been a fan of him. I've been following him on Instagram for a while now. Right. I've been following him on Instagram for a while. You can check out. In fact, I want every single person on this call to follow him on Instagram. You see, we all have to follow him on Instagram. Please, Mr. Jeremiah, please help me copy his Instagram link. Francis, copy his Instagram link and drop it here in the chat section. Everybody, please make sure you follow Mr. Umar. Make sure you follow Mr. Umar on Instagram. I met him on Instagram. This man is a fantastic man. He shares a whole lot of informative tips about programming, about software engineering, right? And I strongly believe that you will be able to learn a lot from what this man has to offer. Do you understand? So just go ahead and just search for Umar Code, or I search for Umar Code on Instagram, and you will be able to, and you will get it. All right. Search for Umar Code. Now, if you have any questions that you want to ask, I would ask you to take out your pen and paper right now and start jotting. He's going to tell us a whole lot of things today. He's going to tell us a whole lot of things, and we're going to have an extra session to ask questions. Questions are very important. All right. It's going to be teaching us. Then after teaching us, we're going to have, in fact, up to 30 to 40 minutes to just answer questions. Do you understand? So we have a lot of software engineers in the building. We have a lot of programmers in the building. We have a lot of intermediate software engineers in the building. They don't know how to transition from where they are right now to the next level in software engineering. And we literally have a chairman in the building right now. So I would say you should use this opportunity well, because let me tell you something, this opportunity might not come again. You might not have this opportunity to have a one-on-one with an industrial leader like this. That is why I always tell people, join communities. This is some of the perks you are going to get from joining communities. Do you understand? So without further ado, we are going to, Francis, please, can you take your presentation down? Without further ado, I invite Mr. Umar Abu. Thank you very much for being here with us. You can unmute your microphone, sir. If you can hear me right now, you can unmute your microphone.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Yeah. Very good. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. What time is it over there?
It's 8:20 in the morning.
8:20 in the morning.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. That's about 6 hours ahead.
8 hours, I believe. Between
Oh,
6 and
8
8.
hours.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, beautiful. All right, thank you for being with us today. We do appreciate it. Right, please, I want everyone, please come to the chat section and type, thank you, Mr. Abu. Please, I need you to type, thank you, Mr. Umar. Please type, thank you, Mr. Umar. He's a very busy man. I'm serious. He's a very, very busy man. For him to be here today, it's not beans, so it's not beans. All right, it's not beans. All right, so I'm going to go on mute now. You have the floor, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the introduction, Samuel. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start presenting. Okay, then we're going to go from here, present a view. Can everyone see my screen? I am going to
Yes,
take that.
I can see the screen.
Okay, you can see it? Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for having me, Samuel. When you reached out to present, I immediately jumped on the opportunity because mentorship is something that is very close to my heart as well. So having the opportunity to present and share my thoughts, things that I've learned about AI and, you know, the whole AI revolution in the job market was something that's it's something that is interesting to me, and as well as sharing it with people as well. So in today's presentation, I will be talking about preparing for AI, the AI revolution in the tech job market, right? So we've seen in the last few years, in the last 3 to 4 years, a lot of things have been happening in the tech space, right? It started with things like ChatGPT, you know, where you go and ask it questions and it just answers the questions, right? And at first it was cool, it was simple. Then eventually we moved on to people asking it to do specific things with regards to code, right? Or copywriting or design. And then, you know, it started happening. Then other AI models started releasing other tools like Mid-Journey that can create images, right? And there's definitely some disruption happening there. And then if you're a software engineer, you've probably heard about Devon AI, which is the first AI software engineer. And so there will be some disruptions in the job market. And what I want to talk about today is how you can align yourself to benefit from that disruption, right? How you can future-proof yourself for years and years to come. So to start, I'm going to briefly go over the agenda, what we'll be talking about today, right? So first, I'm going to go over a brief introduction of myself. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, my background, how I got to where I am, how I started, and everything that went through, basically all the steps of my journey from, you know, being in secondary school to university to currently where I am. And from there, we'll go into understanding AI, right? What is this whole AI thing, right? I'll give a brief overview of what AI is. We'll go into some different parts of AI and see, you know, go into like a brief history to see how it's been applied in the past, right? So this revolution isn't necessarily a new thing. It has happened before, and we'll basically go over the trends, right? See how it happened before and how it changed specific job markets, right? Then next, we'll go into understanding generative AI, right? That's the new big word, Gen AI for short, right? How does this thing work, right? Can it really replace you at your job, right? And if so, how do you future-proof yourself? How do you stay ahead? And then we'll go over the current state of generative AI today, right? We're seeing a lot of these videos, a lot of these product demos, a lot of this, you know, headline saying, you know, AI is going to replace engineers, right? Is that really true, right? Is that really the case, right? What can generative AI today actually do, and what are some of the limitations it has? And then finally, I'll be talking about how to get ready for the future, how you can future-proof yourself, things that you can start doing now, and things that, you know, you can spot in the future. That way you're better aligned when opportunities come across your way. And finally, as Samuel said, I'll make sure to leave ample time for some Q&A. All right. So beginning with an introduction on myself. So my name is Umar Abu. I was born and raised in Jos, Plateau State. I went to secondary school in Baptist High School, Jos. I graduated in 2014 and moved to the United States for school. I moved to the US in 2014. I went to school at Iowa State University, where I graduated with a bachelor's in software engineering. I'm currently based in Seattle, Washington, and I am a software engineer at Microsoft. And I'm also a content creator as well. So I make videos about tech, programming, anything that I find particularly interesting. I make a video, script it, and shoot it, and I share it with people. I really enjoy teaching. I really enjoy mentoring. And most of all, I enjoy working on projects. I enjoy coming up with an idea and then seeing it through and then seeing the implementation and sharing it with people. So a brief history of how I started. I originally started off in aerospace engineering, actually. That's a picture of me my freshman year in school, where we built a plane that we eventually flew. But I started off in aerospace engineering, and I majored in aerospace engineering because I love complicated things, right? So the first time I saw a plane, I was fascinated by the fact that it can go up in the air and land in one piece. And from there, I said, okay, I wanted to study aerospace engineering. But then I switched from aerospace engineering and transitioned to software engineering in May of 2017. And after I transitioned to software engineering, I transitioned in the middle of the semester, and so I couldn't take any software engineering classes. So I dropped all my aerospace classes and I went to LinkedIn Learning, which at the time was called lynda.com. And I basically learned the basics, right? I learned HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And with just, the time that I spent, the 1 to 2 months that I spent learning those basics, I was able to get an internship, my first internship at my university campus, right? And for me, that basically hit a switch in my head, right? It was like I was in control of my own destiny. If I put in the work, right? If I sit down and I learn this thing and I work on this project, then, the world was my oyster. I could basically do whatever I wanted. And that was why I loved and transitioned to software engineering. It was exactly what I was looking for. So that picture there on the right is me presenting my first coding project at a conference, where we were presenting it to a group of farmers, and I was showing them what I built and how to use it. And it was a very exciting time, especially because, you see all this websites, you see this application online, but then building it and presenting it to people to use it, it was definitely eye-opening for me. As the years progressed, I did a lot of hackathon projects. I built mobile apps, I built web applications, I built automation. Anything I found interesting, I did. That led me to get a job as a web developer with the Department of Civil and Construction Engineering at my university. It was mostly using WordPress, so I can relate to Samuel and the other WordPress developers with it. I then ended up getting a second internship at Rockwell Automation, where I worked on industrial automation, completely different from the web development I was doing at the Department of Civil and Construction Engineering. Then from there, I moved on to another internship at my university, which is where I worked with C and C++, right? Those are lower level languages. Very, very interesting stuff. And my experience all of this point was just basically absorbing as much information as I could, right? I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so each time I stepped into a new place, I was a blank canvas, right? I absorbed as much information as possible. And I think that really helped me understand various facets of software engineering that I then, later on applied to most of my projects. I eventually got my final internship at SPS Commerce, where I was working on EDI software. So software that worked on connecting wholesale suppliers to retailers, right? And that was a very interesting experience, because again, with software you can do a lot of things. You can do many things, right? And then eventually graduated college in May 2020. That's me there, repping Nigeria. And then after that, I got a job at Microsoft, originally in 2020. And then from there, from 2020 to 2024, this year, I have been working with Microsoft as a tech lead, software engineering tech lead in the network automation space. So Microsoft has a lot of firewalls, routers, switches, network devices. Essentially, anywhere there's a Microsoft presence, they have those network devices for their private internal network, and those need to be maintained. The firewall policies on the devices need to be updated from time to time. The devices themselves need to be updated. And so basically just automating that whole process for Microsoft. And I actually recently switched teams to join the Substrate team within Microsoft, basically the M365 team, working on supporting Office 365 products. So when you think of Teams, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, SharePoint, Excel, all of those products sit on top of Substrate, and I'll be working on the service that basically maintains all of that, right? So moving on to my content creation. So I am a content creator. I have recently come to terms with accepting and using that word. I didn't like to use it. I always thought of myself as just someone who enjoyed sharing things that I learn. And apparently when you do that, you're a content creator. So the whole process started when I graduated college. I would be working on these projects and I wanted the way to share them, right? Actually originally started with technical interviewing. To get into Microsoft, I had to do a lot of technical interviewing, and I fell in love with the process and wanted to share it. Then, shared a little bit of that, then moved on to say, okay, why don't I share more about what I'm learning at my work or stuff that I come across and find interesting. And so I ended up doing that, and we've grown to a sizable amount of following on all the three platforms. Yeah. I am also the co-founder of Candor, as they mentioned in my biography. Candor is a company that connects people from underrepresented backgrounds to people in their dream job. So if you want to know what it's like to work at Microsoft, for example, I'm on Candor platform. You can connect with other professionals as well on Candor, and you can meet with them, ask them one-on-one questions. They can mentor you, give you referrals if they think you're a right candidate. And then essentially guide you through the process of getting to a place where you're comfortable, either understanding what it takes to work at that company or just helping you navigate your career to figure out what you want to do. Mentorship is very dear to my heart. And again, that's why I jumped on the opportunity to share my experience when Samuel reached out. I'm also the founder of Uma Codes Academy. So Uma Codes Academy is an online cohort program I created for people who have learned how to code, right? They know how to code from either bootcamp or from, learning online by themselves, but they're having a hard time getting a job or getting interviews, breaking into tech, getting a job. And it's essentially meant to bridge the gap between, all right, I know how to code and I have a job. And there's a lot between that space. And Uma Codes Academy is there to bridge that space. We had the first cohort in February, and the next cohort is set to start sometime later this year. I'll be sharing more information about that when time comes. So that's a little bit about myself. Next, we'll be moving on to understanding AI, right? So let's talk about first, what is AI? What is artificial intelligence, right? And the definition I like to use is essentially a technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human intelligence and problem-solving capabilities, right? So things that humans know how to do, right? It could be ability to see, right? Ability to understand, ability to analyze data, right? Essentially giving that ability or simulating those abilities through computers at the end of the day, right? And so with AI, there's so many aspects of it, right? There's cognitive computing, right? Then there's computer vision, then there's machine learning. And then, through machine learning, you get into neural networks, then you get into deep learning. Then, there's also NLP, which is natural language processing, right? So we'll go into a couple of these. That way we have, we basically see AI in action, right? We basically use it in our everyday lives, but sometimes we may not be aware of what it is. So first is computer vision, right? So computer vision essentially enables computers to identify objects and people in images and videos, right? So what does this look like, right? This is a picture of a street view in a city, and as you can see, there are certain boxes circled around objects, right? In this case, it's showing a person, then it's showing a person on a bicycle, right? Then it's showing like cars in the background, right? This is because an AI system has been trained to see pictures of people and to see pictures of bicycles and then know the difference between them, right? They can basically identify these things in cars as well. And so first it starts with a picture, right? Training it to be able to see these things. Then next we move on to videos, right? On the right here is essentially a very similar, view to what we have on the left, but you can see that this is happening in video and it's happening in real time as well, right? So it's a GIF of just a short clip, but as the computer is seeing these things, it's learning and it's essentially predicting what it can see, right? It's essentially showing what it's understanding. And you may not be able to see because of how small the picture is, but above there is a number percentage there, meaning it's not 100% sure that it's a car. It's not 100% sure that it's a person, right? But it's guessing based on probability, which is something that's very important, and we'll go into in a sec. But understanding what's a person, understanding what's a road, understanding what's a pole, what's a building, what's a tree is important, because then we can later apply this technology to things like self-driving cars, right? When you see a Tesla or any other car that's driving itself, it's because it's using some sort of computer vision to see its surrounding and identify what's an object, what's not an object, what's safe for it to come across, right? And so that's just one aspect of AI, which is computer vision and understanding what things it's seeing and how it can be applied to other parts of our life, right? The next aspect of AI I want to talk about is NLP, which is natural language processing. And natural language processing essentially allows machines to understand and interact with human speech, right? So I'm talking to you now. This video is being transcribed, right? So as I'm talking to you, my voice is being converted into speech, and natural language processing is essentially the technology that enables all of that. And it's essentially it's a type of artificial intelligence, right? If you've ever interacted with Siri, for example, if you're on the Apple iOS system and you've said, "Hey Siri, do X, Y, and Z," play music, do something, then you've interacted with AI in the natural language processing, right? If you've interacted with Amazon, all right, Alexa, you said, "Hey Alexa, do something." Hey Siri, stop.
Pause in the kitchen.
Yes. Sorry, I have an Amazon.
Kitchen.
I have a Siri. This thing, when I said Siri, it started playing music. So yeah, if you've interacted with Alexa, then you've used natural language processing. Same thing with OK Google, right? If you're on the Google system and you've used that, then you've interacted with NLP, natural language processing, at some level. These are high definitions and high descriptions, right? So yeah, next is generative AI. This is the big one, right? This is what some people deem as threats to our job, right? And it's fairly new, or rather, it's not new, but advancements in it are fairly new, right? So first is, let's essentially define what it is, right? It's AI technology that can produce various types of content, including text, imagery, audio, and synthetic data, right? So other AI forms, right? Other AI applications, like we saw in the past, didn't necessarily produce new data, right? Computer vision saw a picture and it could tell you what's in the picture, right? Natural language processing simply used our text, right? Our voices, our words, to then convert it into text to then do some action, right? Generative AI is the first one that's actually creating new stuff based on previous patterns, right? Based on data it has seen before, right? And so what that means, an example of that is ChatGPT. I'm sure at this point in time, we all know of ChatGPT. You basically go and ask it a question, ask it to do something, and you get, based on how you prompt it, you get a specific answer, right? Next is GitHub Copilot. If you're a developer and you've used GitHub in any action, you've probably come across GitHub Copilot. It can essentially generate code, right? Then there's Midjourney. Midjourney is essentially a platform that you can use to generate pictures, images, and stuff like that, right? And then finally, there's Adobe Firefly. Adobe Firefly is one that similar to GitHub Copilot. It has been integrated into a product that we use, which is either Premiere Pro, After Effects, or any of the video editing tools, right? So these are examples of, you know, generative AI and how some generative AI products and how they're integrated into stuff that we use every day, right? Next, I want to briefly talk about how generative AI works. So I think there's some misconception about, you know, how things work in the back. A lot of people think it's a database of just information and it knows what you're asking, but that's not the case, right? So it essentially uses neural networks to identify patterns and structure within existing data to generate new and original content sometimes. So what does that mean? That means when you ask ChatGPT to give you a list of reasons why AI is good, right? It doesn't necessarily know those reasons, right? It doesn't know them like the way I would know it if I studied an exam or something, right? If you ask it to generate a recipe for banana bread, for example, it doesn't have experience baking banana bread, right? So it doesn't necessarily know it. What it does is it goes through all its trained data and it tries to infer what should come next within how it's giving you an answer, right? So it essentially looks at previous data and it tries to guess what the next word is, right? That's why when most of the time when you use ChatGPT, it's going word by word, word by word, word by word, because if it knew everything, it would just spit out the whole answer to you. Now, one thing to also note is it's prediction based on probability, right? Meaning most of the time it's right, but there's also a good chance that it could be wrong in the answer that it's giving you because it doesn't know. It's not like a person who will tell you, yeah, I don't know, or I know, right? It's essentially just looking through its data and trying to guess the best possible answer. And from time to time, what it's guessing is right most of the time, because if you train these large language models, which, you know, ChatGPT, Devin AI, and all the other things use, then you can end up getting really, really good results, right? For it to do things like generate actions for the next steps, right? And things like that. So next, I want to talk about the rise of AI agents, right? So briefly, an AI agent is code or mechanisms which act to achieve a predetermined goal. So based on the outcomes of the large language models, right? So say I ask ChatGPT to send an email, to basically draft an email for me to send to X, Y, and Z person, right? It essentially uses data that it's been trained on to predict what an email of this response, right, should look like, right? To predict what an email should look like. And then from there, since it knows how to, you know, predict the next part, which is an email, it can also do things with code, right? It can also write code, meaning it can perform certain actions, right? If you connect it to your Gmail, for example, there's data, it's been trained on how to essentially use these systems, right? Use Gmail, for example, it knows where the send button is, it knows where the text field is, it knows where all these things are, because that's data it's been trained on. And with that, AI agents are things that it can basically do certain actions, right? So one of them is Core AI, which is like a virtual assistant, right? So I use the example with sending email, right? And another one is booking a reservation, for example. It's pretty simple for it to know, okay, to do a reservation, I need to go to this website and click on the reservation button and then click and then do all these things. And so AI agents are essentially bots that can do those things for you based on outcomes from those from generative AI large language models, essentially, right? And so another one that I like to give, which is the one that a lot of people are scared of, is Devin AI, which is the first AI programmer. There was a demo video where Devin basically, you know, they asked it to compare the benchmark from 3 APIs, and it went through, you know, it did some research, right? It opened a browser tab, you know, went through some code, Opened the browser tab, went through documentation. From the documentation, it wrote some code, fixed the code, and did a few other things, right? So those are all things that are possible because of the outcome from the large language models, right? And again, it's not 100% accurate, but it's getting to a point where it's good, right? It's good enough to do some very, very basic, simple tasks, right? Now, the question that we all have, a lot of people have, is, will AI replace me at my job? That's what a lot of people are scared of. That's what a lot of people think. That's what, that's the big question. And the answer to that is, it depends, right? It honestly depends in all transparency, right? So the truth is, AI can do certain roles to an extent, right? So if you're a copywriter, for example, right, and your job is to create copy that sounds a specific way, the reality is that copy, right, the copy that you're creating already exists on the internet, right? Most likely exists on the internet in some form. And a lot of AI models are trained on data from the internet, right? And remember, it's based on prediction on what the next word should be, right? So in that case, if an example of your work already exists on the internet, right, with proper prompting and all of that, there is a high chance that AI can replace you at your job, right? If your job is to do simple copywriting, right? Another one is certain design roles, right? Some media large language models are trained with video and audio data. What that means is they've carried videos from YouTube, they've carried videos from Instagram, from TikTok, from all these places, and they've thrown it at those large language models, and it understands the pattern of a simple video, right? Or it understands the idea of, all right, this is how this type of video should look and feel. This is how this type of picture should look and feel. And so there are certain AI products, AI tools that can essentially create a simple mobile app design, right? Now, keyword on simple, right? If your design is very, very complicated and it's unique and it solves, a specific problem in a specific way, then more than likely it can try, but it won't do it as well as you, right? Next is certain programming task. I am a developer myself, and sometimes I carry some very, very complicated code, put it in ChatGPT and say, all right, explain what this thing is doing, and it can go through and it can basically explain what the code is doing. Because for me to read 100 lines of code and try to understand it, especially if the code is not well written, there's no inline documentation, the variables are not named properly, right? It's essentially certain things that AI can do, right? So the reality is, in as much as it's good and it can do some basic things, it also has a lot of problems that are not at the point where it can wholesale replace everybody, right? The first is you have to prompt it correctly to get proper results. Otherwise, you are getting generic and simple results, right? If anyone has used ChatGPT, you know that the one thing that it's good for, if you use it just regularly, is speed, right? It can help you generate ideas, things that you would have gone to Google to search, and then, create a list, maybe go to like 4 or 5 sites to try to create a list or try to get the answer. ChatGPT can give all of that to you, right? So it's good, but you have to prompt it properly to get that next level result, things that you can't do yourself. Next is, it's currently only good at basic tasks, right? If you prompt it to do something that is way more complicated, right? Creating a multi-level, very, very complicated application, then it may start, but soon when you try to run whatever it creates, you realize, it didn't work properly, or, things are off, or, it's not doing something the way it should. Again, remember, these things are running on trained data, right? So if it has seen a pattern that has done what you've asked it to do before, then it's good, right? Very, very simple stuff. But if it hasn't, then it's not really as good, right? It's a good place to start. It's a good place for it to give you an idea of where to start, but it's not really, really good. Another thing is, it's super, super, super expensive, right? I think that's something that goes under the radar, right? To train these models in a way to get the results that we're getting from ChatGPT, GPT-4, and other models, it's costing companies, right? It's costing these companies billions of dollars, like a lot of money, right? And if we then think about, all right, how does that then translate to replacing engineers, right? How does that then translate to replacing you at your job, right? They have to essentially be able to make that money back in some way, meaning it'll be way more expensive for them to use these models than for them, if the models are not 100% accurate, right? Then for them to just use an actual human being who knows what they're doing and they can communicate with them back and forth to then make changes to work, right? Finally, at the end of the day, it is communicating with a computer. And when I was learning computer science in secondary school, there was this term that they used called garbage in, garbage out. You give garbage into the computer, it'll give you garbage out, right? The computer itself is not wrong. And so a lot of times there's the human aspect that comes into it, where if you don't prompt this thing the right way, you won't get the results you want. And prompt engineering is a whole thing, right? It's a whole field that people go into to learn how to interact with these large language models for them to, essentially give proper results, right? Now, the truth is, all right, next part is, how do you prepare for this AI revolution, right? The first step is to embrace the change. I hate to say it, but the change is coming and it's here to stay, right? It's not even I hate to say it. I actually take that back. There come times when every either 10 years, 15 years, every certain number of times, there are changes that happen, right? There are revolutions that happen. The internet bubble was one of them, right? I think prior to the year 2000 to 2000 and something, right? Before the year 2000, the internet wasn't as big as it was, right? And when the internet came, there was that fear that, certain things weren't going to happen, certain jobs would be lost. But, it's because of the internet that I'm able to have this conversation with you, right? Have this presentation with you. Change is coming, embrace it, right? We thought the crypto boom, right? The whole cryptocurrency era, the whole Web3 era was going to be the next wave of the internet. And in as much as it wasn't as widely adopted as we hoped, right, for the changes that we wanted to happen, it was still a change that was there, that came, right? And my view on things like this is to embrace it, right? Change is the only constant, right? Learn to adapt to these changes, because today may be AI, next tomorrow or in the next 5-10 years it may be something completely different, right? So these changes are here to stay and they'll keep happening, so we might as well embrace it. The next step is, how about we use it to our advantages, to our advantage? Whatever field you're in, lean into AI in that field, right? Lean into whatever AI tools is going to help you do your job properly, right? Learn prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is a huge one, because even as a developer, right, there's a way you can prompt a large language model or ChatGPT or anything to write some code, right, for you. And depending on how you prompt it, it gives you either really, really good code, or it gives you really good result, or it then gives you bad result, right? So learn these things, right? Ultimately, when or if AI does replace jobs, someone still has to control that AI. Someone has to prompt it. Someone has to tell it what to do. How about that person be you, right? Instead of sitting back and saying, oh, this change is going to happen, I'm not going to, AI is going to take my job. I'm going to go do something different. Someone has to control AI, right? Learn how to do those things, right? Lean into it instead of, being afraid and saying, okay, I'm going to go do something AI can do. Because the reality is, if we think about, artificial intelligence from a holistic view, right? Think of it from the point, technically no job is safe from AI, right? No job is safe from AI, except maybe people management and top level executive, because there are robots that have the dexterity of human beings, right? There are robots that can farm. There are robots that can do a lot of things. So how about, instead of, trying to say, okay, let's go somewhere where there's no AI. Let's lean into it. Let's learn how to use these AI tools. As a matter of fact, in the future, I see AI as a skill that people learn to do their job. Similar to how, as a developer, for example, you need to know how to code. AI would be one of those requirements that, all right, you need to have experience using this AI model as it relates to your field. Because instead of it replacing jobs, I honestly think it'll essentially extend capabilities, right? So I am a software engineer. I may not necessarily know how to do some front-end work, right? Or do some design work. What AI will do is it'll essentially enable me to extend my capabilities to be able to do some basic design work, right? That's how I look at it, as opposed to, completely replacing jobs, right? So the next is challenge yourself to be better, to learn things continuously. The reality is, if you're at a level, where AI can do your job, right? AI can do things that you know how to do, right? Do the best of your abilities, then your job was never complicated to begin with, right? To the start, right? Because as I said, these models struggle on things that are very complicated, right? How about you learn to level up your skills, right? You learn to be better in terms of, okay, I know this, but how about you go one step underneath to learn the abstracted layer, right? Learn how things work, learn how, build more complicated projects, expand your knowledge base of how things work. Because essentially, the people who know how things work, right? The people who know more than the average people, right? Sorry, more than the average person in your field, right? If you're a developer, and you know only how to build, if you're a developer, you know how to build a basic page in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. AI can do that because it's very simple. Challenge yourself to learn better. Challenge yourself to do better. Challenge yourself to learn more information, right? To build things that AI can do, right? Then from there, you can then use AI as a tool to extend your capabilities, right? When you learn, sorry, I was going to give an example, but it just went over my head. But yeah, those are my top 3 tips for essentially how you prepare for the AI revolution. Just to summarize, embrace it. Embrace the change. It's here to stay, right? Lean into it. Use it to your advantage, right? Learn it like the way you learned how to use whatever tool that you're using for your job, right? If you're doing web development in WordPress, you had to learn WordPress. Go into these AI tools, right? Because they're here to stay, and the productivity that they give they're too much for companies not to care about them. That's the reality. Companies care about profit at the end of the day. And if I can, extend my job or extend my role as a software developer and have Devin AI do some back end work for me, why not? You understand what I mean? So I think my whole point here is just lean into it, learn how to use it, get better at it, because it's here to stay. Yeah, that's basically all I have for you. Thank you very much for sitting through the presentation. At this point, I will take any questions or point it back to you, Samuel.
Oh, that is fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Please, I want everybody to come to this chat section and let us say a very big thank you to Mr. Umar Abu. Please come to the chat section and say a very thank you to him. Thank you so much. We do appreciate your time. We do appreciate your wisdom. We do appreciate everything you have sacrificed to be here with us today. Now we are going to take questions, right? We are going to take questions. So let us start with the first 5 questions, right? So the first 5 people that I can see in the comment section type, I have a question. Those are the people I'm going to be calling on. Right. If you have a question, please type in the chat section right here. Type, I have a question. I want to say I have a question. If you have a question, come to the chat section here and type, I have a question. I can see Ogundari. Ogundari is number 1. Madu is number 2. All right. Ogundari is number 1. Madu is number 2. Jonathan is number 3. Olu Kayode is number 4. Let's have one more person. Yeah, I think I have Olu Kayode already. Right, I have Olu Kayode already. So if you have a question, all right. Okay, very good. Very good. If you have questions, you can also type your question out. Type your question out and put it in the chat section. I'm going to read it out loud for Mr. Abu to answer. All right. So we are going to get started. Okay. Please, everybody, make sure your microphone is muted. All right. I'm going to grant everybody access to unmute themselves right now. Please mute your microphone. Please make sure you mute your microphone. All right. Please make sure you mute your microphone so that the entire webinar will not be loud. Thank you. So, Mr. Ogundare, please, you have the floor.
All right, Mr. Umar Habu, thank you so very much for this. We really appreciate you, everybody at Nova University, and every other person joining that are not joining from Nova University. Now, my question is this. Recently, a few days ago, Google just laid off his Python stack.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you've heard the news coming from Nigeria also that Microsoft is leaving, and we might be there might be so many software engineers outside there. And could this be as a result of AI? Because I really do not get why, though there are speculative rumors as to that of Google that they are actually looking for cheap labor. I don't understand where that is coming from, though that is for their Python developers that are being laid off. Could it be as a reason of AI taking of their jobs?
That's a good question. So the Google layoff for their whole Python development team is not as a result of AI, right? From my understanding, at least, AI is not at the point where it can replace entire development teams. If it was, I wouldn't have a job, to be honest, right? Most of the people who I work with wouldn't have jobs, and so that is not the reason. From having been here and having understood and spoken to a few industry leaders here, understand, how things work is, at the end of the day, companies care about one thing: profit, right? They care about their bottom line. They care about making as much money as possible, right? Money, like, essentially they want to increase their revenue, right? And they do that at the expense of anybody and anything, right? They really don't care. And so the layoff of Google developers could have been that they saw they needed to make cuts in order to make X amount of money, right? To raise profit somewhere. And they looked at, okay, of all the programming teams that we have, which one of these teams aren't giving us the most value for the money that we're paying them? And maybe they saw the Python development team as that. It's not because of AI. The reasoning behind Microsoft leaving Lagos, I completely have no idea, right? There could be socio-economic reasons to it. I was talking to a friend and he mentioned something which I actually hadn't heard of. I think I'm not sure of the timeline, but some Binance developers were arrested in Lagos, and they were held for a very, very long time, right? That's not a place where, if you're a company, and yeah, I think they were arrested because the claim was that they were the reason that the dollar was going up, rather that the price of dollar was becoming very, very expensive. And it, if you think about it logically, it really doesn't make sense. But if you're a company, that's not a place where you want to invest in, right? That's not an environment, that's not an ecosystem that you want to be, because if your developers, if your employees aren't safe, then it may not be the thing. Again, this is all speculation. I have no idea, but it could be one of the reasons, right? Well, what I do know for sure is AI is not at a place where it can replace full-fledged developers yet. And that's not the reasoning behind the Google layoffs. It's mainly because of corporate. A lot of times these decisions are made by the shareholders, people who don't necessarily understand how things work underneath. All they care about is seeing one number go up, and that's profit, and they don't care how it happens. The decision to lay off the Python developers will have an impact on Google. It's not something they'll see now. It's something that they'll see down the line when tools and services aren't working the way they expect them to, and the person or the team that was responsible for it, they basically laid them off. So a lot of these decisions don't happen because, oh, AI is happening, let's go replace these people, right? It happens for one reason, and that's just so that the company can make more money at the end of the day. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers my question.
All right. Thank you very much for that. So we're going to have the next person, Madu. Madu, are you there? Please, you can unmute your microphone and speak. Can you hear me, Mr. Madu? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Yes.
can hear you. Can go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to greet Mr. Umar. I also want to greet Mr. Gundare and the rest of my fellow participants. Actually, I enjoyed the webinar. My question is this, Mr. Umar, you made mention that the future is heading to a point where AI will be able to replace some jobs. And then that a way out, one of the way out is to look for a kind of job where you can control the processes that AI will be doing in the future. Please, I want to know in specifics, what are those jobs? What are those jobs that can take care of the operation of AI in the nearest future? And then I also want to know if programming as a fundamental is a basics of those jobs. Thank you very much.
That's a good question, Madu. So I think what I meant is AI is going to it's coming to stay, right? But I didn't mean look for jobs that AI can do. What I meant is in your own role, right? In whatever brings you fulfillment, in whatever makes you happy. If it's software engineering, if it's web development, mobile app development, if it's design, if it's video editing, if it's digital marketing, learn to use AI in your own roles, right? Embrace it, right? That is what I meant. I didn't mean find specific roles that AI can do, right? What I mean is within your own role, right? If they bring you on to be a web designer, for example, how leverage AI in your role. That was what I meant, right? How about you learn to use AI to work for you? Because right now you basically use yourself, right? You use your experience, your background, things you've learned to build or do your work, right? How about you add AI to the list of tools that you use? I'm a developer, I use VS Code. How about I add GitHub Copilot to the tools that I use to build AI, right? That is what I meant in terms of learning to use AI, right? Not going to seek out fields where you can use AI as a tool, because the reality is AI is going to get to a place where you can do a lot of things, right? And if you chase places where you can control it, it'll be everywhere, right? But at the end of the day, you still want to find fulfillment in what you're doing. So learn to use AI in what you're doing. That way it works for you and you can leverage it when time comes. Does that answer your question? Sorry? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I think it's okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you
Yes,
for
I'm okay.
that.
I'm okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So before we continue, I think I have a question that I actually want to ask. Before I take Mr. I think the next person should be Jonathan. So before I take Jonathan, I have a question that I want to ask. So AI tools are actually very helpful. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
AI tools they are very, very helpful. But I have this fear that AI is making us quote unquote lazier. I'm going to start an example. Um, I I had a reason to write a statement of purpose, right, for a scholarship program that I applied for. So normally I've applied for scholarship programs in the past, and it takes me more than 1 week, 2 weeks to make sure I craft out the perfect statement of purpose, right? But I was able to use ChatGPT to complete this task in less than 3 days. All right. I wrote something, gave it some prompt, and it generated a very, very good, a very, very fantastic statement of purpose for me, right? Which is good. I mean, it does it very fast and it does it perfect. But I feel that I did not feel as fulfilled as doing this thing myself as I used to feel then back then in school, right? When I write this thing myself, I'll be like, okay, fine. Going through this challenge has made me a better person, right? It has increased my knowledge base, it has increased, the length at which I'm able to go in order to get things done, right? So now I can just get it at the snap of my finger. It's AI. Also, students in the school, they are using AIs to do their assignments, something that you are supposed to put your head through and actually gain something from it. They're just writing a couple of forms and they're getting the result and they're submitting, they're passing. So how can we bridge this? AI is doing our job for us, but is it not in a way having a negative impact on us? The other day I was trying to send an email to someone, and I can rack my brain and type the email, but there's an easy way out. I can actually ask the ChatGPT to respond to this person. Just copy what they have sent to me, send it to ChatGPT and tell them that, okay, do this, respond to this person, and give me a very perfect official email to send to this person. I should have done that by myself. It should have made me better, but AI is doing that for me right now. Now, if we allow this to go on a large scale, are we not raising a generation of people that are not as seasoned as they are supposed to be?
That is an absolutely great question. I was listening to a podcast where someone said something very similar, where back in university, right, or back in secondary school, when you were asked to write an essay on something, right, or when you were asked to write a paper on something, after writing the paper, you most likely haven't gone back. Right now, you don't even know where the paper is, right? After writing the paper, you never went back to read the actual paper itself. What was important? The paper itself wasn't important. It was the process that you went through in order to get to that paper, right? The research that you did, right? The determination, right? The not giving up, the going to all the sources and, trying to build the right paper, right? Trying to write the right paper. So you're absolutely right. A lot of times with the work that we do and the tasks that we do, the end product is not the end goal, especially if we are in a learning phase, right? The work that we put into getting to that goal is more important than the end goal itself, because it teaches you what is needed to essentially function in the real world at work. For example, if someone asks you to go do something, there's so many steps that goes into it, and having that experience, right, having done that in the past with a similar project or with a similar scenario, that is what enables you to use those skills that you learned in the past to achieve this task where the end goal is important. In the past, the end goal wasn't important, right? It was the process of getting to it. And so to some extent, yes, AI does, limit, or at least makes us I wouldn't use the word lazy to an extent, because depending on what the task is, right? Depending on what you're asked to do, sometimes the brain power that you use, for example, you mentioned sending an email, right? If I know what I want to say, but I know I have to craft this thing in a way that portrays a certain type of information, right? And I don't have time, or at least I have, 9 or 10 other things to do, and I want to be productive, then yes, using AI to draft that email or send it, right, is absolutely, it's fine, because at the end of the day, me drafting that, I'm at the point in my life where me drafting another email to sound a certain way or sound a specific way isn't going to drastically add any value to me, right? It's not it's essentially not going to make me a better email writer, right? It's not something that I want to get really
And
good at.
anything pops up, no. Yeah, I know the Google. Yeah, I need a lot of things.
Sorry, I just
Please
muted
make
them.
sure your microphone is muted, everyone. Please mute your microphone.
Yeah, it's not something that I'm going to get really, really good at, right? But to your point again, right? Things like writing essays about like your personal experience, your personal journeys and things like that, right? That's something that I would say you do yourself, right? One thing that I specifically do, especially when I'm working with AI, is I only use it for initially to get ideas, right? Say I need to do some research about something, right? Either instead of going to the internet and having 9 or 10 different tabs open, I can ask it to give me all this information, right? It's essentially limiting the time. It's making me more productive in that I don't have to spend 5 hours to go, do all this research when I can type something and it can give me semi-accurate answers, right? But we do have to be cautious in the way we do it, where if you're still learning, right, you have to make sure you're understanding what AI is giving you and not just blindly copying and pasting, because sometimes it could be wrong. That's the first thing. Secondly, there may be scenarios where the AI has given you something and it works today, but tomorrow it doesn't work. And if you don't understand the underlying architecture of how things work, right, how what it's giving you has worked, then you're in a weird place, because what then happens is clearly the AI is now the one that's doing the job for you and not you. So I do think there's a balance, right? There's a fine line between, okay, I'm going to use AI to do everything, or I'm going to use AI to do only specific things that can help me be productive faster, right? If you're in a creative field, for example, using AI to come up with different ideas that you can then, join and then put together to create something is completely fine. But I can also understand if you're like, all right, I want to do this thing myself, right? I think it's about finding the balance and understanding what you're copying from AI, because ultimately it's going to make you more productive to some sense, right? The question is, are you understanding what you're copying from it, right? And sometimes you have to ask yourself the question, would me going through the manual process of doing this thing make me better, right? Will it add to me? Will it add to my skills? Will it add to stuff that I want to learn? If the answer to that is yes, then do it. But sometimes it's like, listen, I don't have time, I need to do this thing really, really fast, right? Ultimately, it's a tool, and how you use it, depends on your exact scenario, right? I can choose to walk to a grocery store, or I can choose to drive to a grocery store, right? It all depends on what I need at that time, right? If I've been indoor all day and I need to get exercise, then yeah, I'll most likely walk. But if I'm in a situation where walking isn't going to benefit me, then I'll drive. That's the way I like to think about it.
All right, thank you very much for that perfect answer. All right, so we're going to take the next person, Jonathan. So please, everyone, make sure your microphone is muted, all right? Make sure your microphone is muted so that we are not going to have distractions. So I'm going to grant you access to speak now, Mr. Jonathan. I hope you're ready. Jonathan, you're ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I am ready, sir.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Vixam, for the opportunity, and to Mr. Umar Abu. I say a very big thank you for this very, very captivating lecture. I wish it would not end, actually. During the course of your lecture, you said something about prompt engineering, and that really caught my attention, because I've heard about it before now, and I know that it is something that would really give whoever an advantage when it comes to the world of AI, right? And my question is, how do we navigate the field of prompt engineering? If you could point us in a direction where we could actually start, it would really be helpful. How do we navigate this field? And Secondly, my question is two in one. Is what are the basic skills that you feel like a prompt engineer should possess? Basic skills like prompt engineer should possess. Thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So,
Well,
I'm going to mute you
I'm
just
going to
because
mute
there's
you
some
just
feedback.
because there's no feedback.
All right, sounds good. So,
Sounds good. So,
okay. Prompt engineering is relatively new. From what I know about it, there are different large language models, right? There are different AI tools and different large language models, and they act in different ways based on how they are trained. So there's different training models, right? There's different ways of training, rather. There's supervised training and unsupervised training, right? So supervised training, most of them are trained in an unsupervised training way, where they just give the large language model all the data and they let it do what it does, right? And they don't necessarily interfere with that training in a very, very specific way. Now, with that, the reality is, because of how that training works, the engineers themselves, they don't, the people who train it, they don't 100% understand what's happening or how it works inside. And so to get certain answers, right? To get certain answers or to get certain responses from the large language models and from the AI, you have to ask it questions in certain ways and, give specific key points, or, there's this thing called I think is the RICE model, which is responsibility, something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but there's a way you have to ask it to do certain things, right? And based on how you ask it to do that thing, it can give you detailed responses, or it can give you just a generic response. And learning how to do, or how to ask these large language models that question, is essentially prompt engineering. Now, the different models, right, they have different ways of doing things, right? So OpenAI has their own model, Google has their own model, Facebook has their own model, and you can ask all these models a very similar question and then they'll answer, in completely different ways. And so one place to start is by testing out these models on your own, right? Doing the legwork, doing the groundwork, right? A lot of them have free versions that you can go online and you can start using, and basically trying to understand how not necessarily how they think, but how they behave, right? And then from there, I would say using YouTube is a very, very, very good resources. There are a lot of people who train these models, right, who have machine learning experience, and they make these really, really interesting videos like myself, right? I don't have any AI videos, but the way I make videos about software engineering programming, there are tons and tons of videos about AI and prompt engineering. I would watch those videos to then get a better feel for what is essentially needed. And so then, yeah, the second part of your question was what skills are needed. I would say at a basic level, understanding how these models are trained, right? I'm not saying go into the math and the science and all that stuff, but understanding how the data is ingested and understanding the different training mechanisms, right, at a very, very high level, similar to how I know this thing. Because if you know one model is trained a certain way, right, or another model is trained like a different way from the first one, then from there you can basically have a feel for how to prompt certain models to do certain things, right? So the way I would prompt a large language model that has been trained specifically to write code would be different from how I would prompt one that's been trained to like answer regular questions, right? So if you understand how those systems work at a high level, again, not going into training your own models, right? That's a whole different thing. Understanding how they work on a high level, I think that's a good skill to have. And then from there, you can essentially add more. You can add more to your knowledge by going to YouTube and using all those free resources on there.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for that. So the rest of the questions that we have here have been typed here in the chat section. So I'm going to read them out loud for everyone to get. So the next person is Mr. Olukayode Sheson. So can can AI solve some troubleshooting issues while trying to use some softwares? For example, how can AI, how can explore AI to solve the failures of software installation, like elevator plugin installation failing to install in WordPress? So I think what this person is saying is that, okay, working with a particular software, can we leverage on AI in order to troubleshoot, what is going on? Should we run into an error or something like that?
Absolutely. So what I do sometimes is, when as developers we get an error, right? Sometimes it shows exactly where the error is and why it shows what line the error is happening at, but it's a runtime error and not a compilation error, meaning according to the compiler it's fine, but the code is failing during runtime, right? So because of that, you don't know why it's failing, right? If you haven't had experience. What I do with most of the thing is sometimes I would copy, if there was no AI, I would copy the code and the failure that I'm getting and put it in Google and go to Stack Overflow, GitHub Gist, and all those places, and basically
read through.
Exactly, just read through, right? But since AI is basically trained on data from Stack Overflow, the whole internet essentially, right? ChatGPT and all that thing. You can copy that error you're getting and say, I'm getting this error while trying to do X, Y, and Z, right? You have to give it context as to why you are getting that error, right? I think that's something in prompt engineering, right? You have to give it context. I think role something context. So when you give it context as to say, okay, I'm getting this error while doing this and doing, X, Y, and Z, right? Then it then gives you a more detailed answer as to say, okay, this error seems to be coming from X, Y, and Z based on all the data that it's been trained from. Because sometimes the way Google search engines work is they give you answers based on what they think you might want, right? But not necessarily what is the actual right answer, right? Because of the index, right? Sometimes the answer to your specific question is in a website that someone hasn't visited in a very, very long time, right? And so because of that, the search result may not put that website right on top. But what AI does is, again, it can parse through and it can essentially process all of that information, right? The hundreds of web pages that Google gives you when you search for an answer, AI has already been trained on that. So it can go through that information way faster and predict what you may be wanting based on what you've asked, right? So it's a lot faster. And most of the time I found that it gives me more accurate result when, searching for the stuff on Google doesn't work. So yeah, I would just search, I am having problems doing X, Y, and Z, installing so plugin. This is the error I'm getting. Can you explain why I'm getting this error and suggest ways to fix it? Press enter. And sometimes, it'll give you, oh yeah, this error seems to be happening because of this. Because you can access all the websites. You can also access documentation about the thing that you're trying to install, right? Sometimes maybe you're not doing it the right way. You can access documentation to go see the errors, to go see everything. So that's typically how I would use AI to debug, systems that you're doing. Just ask it a question the way you would ask me a question if we're working on like a software product together.
Okay, so this next question, I believe you've answered it before. Brian Coleman is asking, the big tech companies have laid off a lot, tens of thousands of people. Can we say AI played the biggest role in these massive layoffs?
No. I don't think AI played a role in these big layoffs. Economic conditions played a role. So a brief history. So when the pandemic happened, interest rates, everyone was locked down, right? Everyone was in their house because of the pandemic. People couldn't go out. And in the US, what then happens is when people aren't spending money, that's not good for the economy, right? Things are going to go down. So what they did is they lowered interest rates to make it easy to borrow money for people to spend. Now, when they lowered the interest rates, companies started hiring like crazy, right? Because money is cheap to borrow. If I can borrow 50K, for example, right, 50,000 US dollars, and I don't have to pay any interest or very, very little interest on it, then I'm more likely to experiment on things that I'm like, okay, this may or may not work, but you know what? It's cheap for me to borrow money. It's cheap for me to spend money. Now, when that happens, because of the lowered interest rate and all of that stuff, people borrowed a lot. Companies borrowed a lot of money, and with pandemic and a bunch of things, inflation started to happen, essentially, where there's a lot of money in the economy, but then the price of companies then started increasing their goods, like the price of their goods as well, right? Meaning things are now getting more and more and more and more expensive, right? So now, because of that inflation happening, the government is like, all right, we need to curb this inflation. So they then increased interest rates to make sure people don't borrow as much, right? To make it more expensive for things to borrow, so that people will stop spending. And then when people stop spending, then the price of things will go down. Now, the issue with that is these companies already hired more than they needed to during the pandemic because they could borrow, right? It was easy for them to do these experimental things. And so a lot of their loans were not fixed, right? You can think about it that way, right? Imagine I was paying 0% interest, right? And then all of a sudden, overnight, I'm paying 7% interest on $1 million loan, right? I immediately want to find a way to at least reduce the amount of money that I'm paying, right? Especially if, what I'm spending on may not be giving me returns, right? It's on experimental things. And then that's when the layoffs happen, right? Again, I think I said this earlier, but I'll keep mentioning it because it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned since I got here is companies care about profit. That's the only thing they care about, and they don't care whose head is on the chopping block. The CEO is replaceable. Company like CEO, the number one person in the company, right? They report to the board, right? And the board only cares about making money. They really don't care about anything else. And so when they have opportunities to make money where they say, okay, I'm going to lay off 10,000 people because, if we lay off these people, then we won't have to pay their salaries, right? Paying salaries, right? Labor is the number one cost for companies, is the number one cost. So whenever they're looking to save a lot of money, that's the first place to look. They look at laying people off because it's typically the easiest way for them to stop paying a lot of money, essentially. So it's not because of AI. AI is not at the place where it can, replace teams, right? It's at a place where I can use it to be slightly more productive at my job, but it's not at the place where it can replace wholesale teams. No. It might get there though. It might get there, but it's definitely not there yet. Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. So there is another question. Do you think AI will make us lazy as programmers? I believe we already spoke about this. Do you think AI will make us lazy as programmers?
I wouldn't say lazy. I think it depends on what stage in your programming career you are. I would say if you have a solid foundation, right, and you're using AI to then do things that would have essentially taken you longer, right? Like I've built a lot of React applications, right? If I'm like, okay, I need this component to be created in React and I need to do this thing in a specific way, I've already done it in the past. Doing it again isn't going to increase my knowledge of the thing, and I use AI, then that's completely fine, right? It's not making me lazy. If anything, it's making me more productive. But the difference between that and a new person is if I need to go into the code to change something, I know where to look because I have experience. I've done it before. If you haven't done it before, then I would suggest you don't use AI. I would suggest you do it yourself. That way you get the experience. But I wouldn't think about it as lazy. I would think about it as productive, right? Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. So this next question is actually quite important one. As beginners, learning UI UX in 2024, are we too late? Are we learning the wrong thing at this present time? Because AI can now do a lot of this basic stuff. And I think as a beginner, we are far behind or not on point. So yeah, I mean, this is something that I actually think about too as well, because there are a lot of generative AI and they are just going to keep on getting better. I've seen platforms, fantastic platforms that have create UI UX of components in Figma. There is a particular plugin in Figma that all you just have to do is to prompt it and it generates an entire landing page for you, right? Graphic designers, they are generative AI like Midjourney and some of these things that they are building currently right now that can create very good visual striking images for you that you can use in your marketing and all that. So it's important learning as a beginner. I mean, I could understand if you're already a veteran at the job, if you already have 5 years of experience, you can monitor the AI to do stuff. But I'm a beginner. Should I spend my time to learn these things? Right. In the next 5 years, when I become the quote unquote veteran, is the skill even worth it anymore at that point? So yeah, that's the question.
It's an interesting question because my viewpoint on things like this is at some point in time, like I think if you based what you're learning based on what AI can do, then what's the alternative? Right? What are your other options? Not to learn anything because AI is going to be able to do it in 5 years. Right? It doesn't make sense for you to say, oh, there's a system like if you say I'm not going to do this thing because AI is going to be able to do it in X amount of years, then if you use that mindset and that thought process, you won't do anything because AI is going to be able to do everything in X amount of years, right? Your journey and AI's journey, yes, they're somewhat linked in the sense that some things that you might be able to do, AI might be able to do them right now, but there are people who are getting paid a lot of money to do things that AI can already do, right? They're not necessarily getting paid because they can do it better. They're getting paid because of the skill that they bring that AI can't do. And that's the personality, right? That's the like UI, UX design, for example, right? At the end of the day, a person still has to understand the system requirements. A person still has to understand the use case from the customer perspective, right? There are certain inputs that you can give as a person that AI would not be able to give, whether it's been trained on data or it's not been trained on data. Human beings evolve, right? AI is trained on past data, so it's trained on things that we've seen in the past. Fields are constantly evolving, right? And it takes time for the models themselves to catch up, right? Some of them are being trained with data from the internet, but it takes time for them to morph in a way for them to do something reasonable with the data they've been trained in, right? Point I'm trying to make is if you want to get into UI UX in 2024, forget about AI. Get into UI UX in 2024, right? It may take you 1 year, it may take you 3 years, it may take you 4 years, it may take you something. If it's something that you enjoy and it fulfills your soul, right? If it's something you want to do, then I don't think using AI as a gauge, as to saying, okay, AI will be able to do it. Why am I even spending my time to do it? AI can drive car. You know what I mean? I showed the self-driving this thing, right? AI can do a lot of things, right? And I think using that as a deterrence from getting to do something that you enjoy, it's not the right way to view these things, right? If anything, you learn the basics, and as I said, start leveraging AI. Start leveraging AI, right? Once you learn how to do these things, as a matter of fact, I think it can even put you at an advantage because as you're learning, you're also learning how AI might be able to help you do certain things, right? So I think thinking about it from am I learning things in the past? Am I learning things in the present? It's not like programming and tech as if itself, right? Being in the UI UX field, programming tech, it's not a dying field, right? It's not a field where there are less and less jobs, right? It's not like I'm trying to find an example. I can't think of one off the top of my head. There will be more job openings, right? We're in a digital age, right? There'll be more job openings, there'll be more things, right? Yes, all these layoffs are happening, well, as I said, they're economic conditions. Once things slow down, more roles will start happening, right? There's periods of boom where economy is doing good, people are hiring, life is good, and then things go low where they need to reset back, and then they basically go back up and down again. So if it's something you want to do now, yes, AI can do a lot of the basic stuff, but you won't be at a place where you're only doing basic stuff for the rest of your life, right? You move to doing more complicated things and then using AI and then leveraging AI. So yeah, I personally wouldn't think about it from a place where AI can do this thing, so I'm not going to learn how to do it. Whatever you want to then learn how to do, you have to be a beginner for some time, right? Whatever you're doing, whether you're riding a bicycle, whether you're learning how to cook, whether you have to be a beginner for some time. That's fine, right? You have to suck at whatever you're doing, right? Someone or something is going to be better than what you're doing for some time at the beginning. But as you gradually get better with more experience, you get to a place where you bring your own unique point of view to things that AI can do. And so, yeah, that's my advice. If you really enjoy it and you want to get into it, absolutely do it. Don't let AI discourage you from doing it.
All right, thank you very much. I'm really glad we had this webinar because a lot of people have a lot of questions regarding AI, and some of these mindsets has to be corrected before they do some long-term damage to this particular, to some particular people. All right, so this next question, I think I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. Please, can you give examples of some AI tools that, with the specific task they perform? But I would say maybe you should tell us some of the AI tools that you particularly use to be productive in your day-to-day task.
No, that's a good question. So I use ChatGPT a lot I kind of use it almost like I kind of use it like Google, essentially. So whenever I have all right, I need to go figure out what this concept is, right? Like I know what the concept is in my head, but then I want to know what the documentation term of it is. I just ask ChatGPT, explain this thing for me in this way, and then it goes through. I also use GitHub Copilot a lot. Sometimes when I want to write or understand unit test, I just ask it to, generate unit test for my code. And then based on that, I then go through and either add more test cases or remove test cases. Grammarly itself isn't an AI tool, but I use Grammarly when I script my videos to go through and then, rewrite certain sentences in specific ways. I also use, when I edit my videos, sometimes I use Adobe Enhance AI stuff to make my voice, to make like the audio of the video sound way, 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 way better. Yeah, I think those are the main ones that I use for now. I think for me personally, I see them as, augmenting the work that I do. So instead of me thinking of, all right, I need to go to this website, read this documentation, do this thing, I can just ask something that's already been trained on all that data for me to use, right? If anything, it makes me more productive. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. I think this is all we have. These are the questions that we have. So if you do have any other question, please do well and type it right now. All right, type it right now if you do have a question. In the absence of any question, I think we have to move forward. Do you have any other question? Do you have any other question? So if you do have any other question, please type. But before we go, I think I'm going to ask this final question, right? I'm going to ask this on behalf of everybody here. Oh, Francis. Okay. Francis, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay. Francis, you can unmute your microphone now. I think I just wanted the answers.
Okay. I don't know. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So my question is this: you have an idea, you know it's going to go far because because you've done your research and you've seen a lot of questions in communities, in developers communities where like Stack Overflows, like the GitHub Q&A section and all, and you see people repeatedly ask for this particular. It's kind of very little, but it's something that every developer makes use of every day. And you've vetted that, and you know that it's something if you develop and push out, it's going to really go far. But then there is this withdrawal syndrome in the African settings that the acceptability for products coming from Africa when it's not really a fintech quote and unquote, right? I don't know, what would you advise me do for validating the acceptability of this particular product in the international market space?
That's a good question. So the way I think about it, right, is if your product is providing value, right, and based on what you mentioned, you've done the research, it's there, then the product is going to speak for itself, right? Like if there are apps that have been created by one person on the App Store, right? It doesn't matter where the app is coming from. It doesn't matter who wrote the code from it, right? As long as it's not doing anything malicious, right? It's not hacking or stealing money or doing anything. Then I think the need for validation in terms of you being I think you possess a lot of power. And I don't think you need validation from the international market in terms of for you to go through with what you're doing, right? For you to go through with what you want to build. If you're passionate about it, right? And you sound like you've done the market research, you've gone through Stack Overflow, you've gone through GitHub Gist, you've gone through, possibly asked a few people a question, then why not build it and put it out there, right? The way the universe works is if your thing is good, if your thing is genuinely good and you have a passion for it and you share it with people, it's going to reward you back, right? You don't need like the validation that you're looking for may not necessarily do what you think it's going to do, right? From the international market, right? If the thing is good and it provides value and it provides a use case, people are going to use it, right? I'm not sure what international validation you're looking for, right? Like the internet itself, it's a bunch of computers connected to each other. It's a network of people who, if they see this thing, a lot of times they don't necessarily care where you're from, right? If you present the facts, if you do this thing properly, if you share your ideas, right, in a way, right? Like I've communicated with people from all over the world, and the developer community specifically, right, doesn't necessarily have that. Personally, I haven't found it, right? But I've spoken with people for like, hours, and then I realized, oh, they're from, X, Y, and Z country. And I didn't even know, and it doesn't matter to me where they're from, right? All that matters is we share a common interest in something. I respect them. They respect me, right? So if your product, right, if your service, if your thing is great, and you come from it from a genuine point of view where you're not trying to take advantage of people, you're not trying to do 419, right? You're not trying to do Ojoro, you're not trying to do anything. Build it, right? You have good intentions with your product. You have good intentions with your service. Build it, put it out there. The universe is going to reward you for it, right? Don't think about, oh, I'm from here, so I can't do this. I'm from there, I can't do this. You hold so much power. I think the zeal to even have the ideas, right? The zeal to say, listen, I've gone to this community, I've done this, and I want to solve this problem. Why are you thinking twice? You know what I mean? Do it. Like the good things happen to people who take action, right? Don't care about, okay, I'm from Nigeria, I'm from this. If anything, I'll say being from Nigeria is even a blessing. Nigerians, we put our head down and we just keep going, right? So use that to your advantage, right? Use that to basically fuel you, and the sky is the limit, essentially, right? Just come from it from a place of good intentions, right? Not to do anything bad, not to do anything, weird. Just come from a place of good intentions. And the second you do that, people are going to tell. People can feel that good energy, right? People can feel that you're genuinely passionate about what you're doing, about what you're sharing. And yeah, that's basically my advice. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Umar. I don't know. Ejura Abu, do you want to ask a question before we call it a day? I think you missed that. Okay, that's okay. Ejura Abu, do you want to ask a question? Okay, maybe that's it. All right. I think this is the final question that me personally I want to ask, and I believe that a whole lot of people like to know this. So, my major in the university is electronic and electrical engineering, right? And perhaps let's say I want to work as a software engineer in Google or Microsoft, right? Is it mandatory that I have a degree in software engineering? I have to tell you that almost 90% of programmers in Nigeria are self-taught, right? Even the ones that graduated from computer science in university, they are self-taught, right? Because you don't get a whole lot of practical stuff in Nigeria. You don't get to work with a lot of companies as interns in Nigeria. The Nigerian education system is not as awesome as as out there, right? So I'm a Nigerian. I have a dream of working with Fortune 500 companies. Do you think my educational background puts me at a disadvantage? That's number one. And number two, what are the things, like, is there a checklist of things that I need to have in order to have this opportunity? How good should I be to even start applying, right? So what level should I be to even have that dream? So
Absolutely.
can you shed some light? So,
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's two parts to it. So a lot of big tech companies they basically took away the requirements for having a bachelor's degree for them to be able to hire you, right? So for some of them, I think one of them brought it back, but for a lot of them, you don't necessarily need to have a bachelor's degree for you to work with them, right? So talk less of a programming degree. Microsoft has this program called the Leap, where they take people from whatever field you're in, teach you stuff about programming, and then you then end up being a software engineer at Microsoft. I have a team member who was a medical doctor. I have and then now she's a team member of mine, a software engineer at Microsoft. I also heard from one of my manager's wife studied chemical engineering. She did the Leap program for a year, and she's going to join Microsoft as a software engineer very, very soon, right? So there are all these opportunities for you that you can take advantage of, not just in Microsoft, but in different different companies, right? So to basically answer your first question, which is, does your background stop you? I will say it looks good on a resume if your background is in software engineering or computer science or computer engineering, and you're applying for a software engineering role at a big tech company. But it absolutely doesn't limit you. As a matter of fact, right, there's a way you can present yourself where at some point in time, no one will care what you studied in school, right? I've worked with people who studied something completely different, like arts, right? And they learned how to code, right? And then from there, they landed a job at a small tech company, and then from there, gradually worked their way up to like big tech companies, right? I think what matters there is showing what you can do. That's the biggest thing. And it's something that I learned when I was interviewing for jobs as an intern. So in school, when I went to school, they would teach you the basics of things, right? They would teach you, all right, this is a database, this is how a database works, right? But I never once wrote code to build any UI when I was in university, right? I didn't do that. What helped me was the projects I worked on, right? Things that I found interesting that I was like, oh, I wonder what it's like to build a web app. I wonder what it's like to build a mobile app, right? I want to build a website that does X, Y, and Z. You know, I sat down, went through all the different various aspects of it. Took me some of them took me like 1 month, some of them took me 6 months, right, to learn. Now, granted, I was in school, so you know that's why it was taking me longer. But when I then went to job interviews, right, first of all, I would share these things. I would share these parts of myself, right? Hey, I learned how to do this thing. I built this mobile app. I built this thing, and then gradually the project started getting slightly more complicated, right? I would then deploy them, right? I would then, you know, share them with people. They wouldn't just be very, very simple applications anymore. They would be way more complicated, right? And so when I then went to career fairs where I was trying to get a job as an international student, which was, I don't know how much you guys know about that, but it's a whole different process. I would be talking to the engineers, right? I would be talking to the recruiters, and they could clearly tell that whether I studied something in school or not, I was better than my peers. Not because I knew more, but it was because of the passion that I have for what I was doing, right? I wasn't getting paid to work on this project. I genuinely had, I had an intrinsic motivation to do these things because I enjoy it. I liked it, right? I like the complicated stuff. And so with that, I was way more ahead of my peers, right? During the career fairs, they would ask, hey, I see this project on your resume. Can you tell me more about it? And I was like, I'll do you one even better. I have the project on the App Store. Bring out your phone and download an app with my name on it, right? At that point in time, what more do you want? Like, it's clear that I clearly know what I'm doing, right? When I would do the technical interviews, right, what would happen would be they would ask me a question and I would answer the question in a way where it was almost like I was their it was almost like I worked with them, right? Because all the technologies they were using at work, all the things that they were using to deploy the applications, I was using that on my personal projects, right? I knew what they were doing, right? It wasn't new stuff to me. I was almost at their level in terms of the technical stuff that I knew and the technical stuff that they knew. And so if you have that mindset, right? If you have that background, then it doesn't matter what you studied in college, right? Your college degree isn't going to help them. What you know how to do is going to help them, right? And the best way to show what you know how to do or to gain those experience is to work on projects, right? Find things in your life where you're like, all right, this is going to solve this problem for me. I'm going to see it through. A lot of people start these projects and they don't finish it. You know yourself. I'm talking to you. You start this project, you don't finish it. You don't see it through, right? Then you go and start another one. And then at the end of the day, you have a bunch of projects that you haven't finished, right? Don't do that, right? See it through, right? Like have an intention behind the things that you work on and do it to the best of your abilities at the current time, right? At some point in time, right? This is how much you know about tech. Now it gradually increases as time goes by, right? You're reading these blogs, you're reading engineering articles, you hear about this thing that this company keeps using, go learn it, use it in your own personal project, get experience with it, add it to your resume. Now, when you're talking to an engineer, right, when people look at your resume, you have that thing, but you also have experience on how you've used it. In that case, it doesn't matter whether you studied arts, right? What they care about is, oh, this guy clearly knows this thing because he's using it in a way that we use it at work, right? So that's my advice in terms of your background. And when you know your stuff, they don't necessarily care where you came from. They don't care how you learned it. What they care about is, do you know how to do it? And can you use it to help us? Can you use it to create value from us? And if you can show them that, that's all they care about. In terms of when you should start applying, even start applying when you understand the basics to have built something that you've seen online, right? I wouldn't wait till you're an expert, right? I wouldn't wait till you're like, all right, I know everything, so I'm going to apply. Nah, when you've learned the basics and you understand, okay, I can hold my own, right? If I see React code online, I can tell what's happening left and right, right? Start applying. It's definitely a hit or a miss. You could, before I got my first internship, I applied everywhere. And then I got one. And then once the first one came in, that was it. Then the next one came in, then the next one came in, then the next one came in. And eventually, once you put yourself out there, you get a good LinkedIn profile, you share your things, the recruiters will be the one to reach out to you. they'll start sending you emails. Hey, I saw your profile. I would love to interview you. You want to work at Google? You want to work at this thing? Once I switched to software engineering in 2018 till 2020, I kept interviewing with Google every time because they saw me, right? I put my stuff on there and they kept sending me emails every year for them to interview me, right? So that's essentially the effect that has, right? Put yourself out there, do the work. It'll take time. It's not easy, right? I'm saying all these things. It's not easy. But if you're intrinsically motivated and you genuinely enjoy what you're doing and you have a passion for it, it will show. The way I'm talking to you about software engineering, if I wasn't getting paid out to do coding, I'll still be doing it. I love this thing, man. I love it, right? You don't have to love it the way I do, right? You don't have to be me, but you genuinely have to enjoy it and put in the work, right? Put in the time to do it, right? Let your time be the evidence, right? Let your passion show through the work that you're doing, right? Take breaks, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, do this thing, No. Gradually. Eventually, all you need is one person. All it takes is just one, right? One person to give you that opportunity. And once you break through, that's it.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I want us to do something right now. Please, everybody, you are free to unmute your microphone. I want us to physically clap for yourself. Unmute your microphone. I want us to clap. Please clap. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right, good. Great. Thank you so much for your time. So we've spent
Absolutely.
almost 2 hours together. Right. God bless you, sir. And I do hope that if we call you in the future, you'll be able to find more time for us. I so much appreciate you. He's a very busy man. He's a very, very busy man. And when I reached out to him, he was so happy to be on our platform. Markwood Academy is coming very soon, and by God's grace, we are going to be having a special relationship with Mr. Umar, and we're going to be having a special relationship with Markwood Academy in order to get people to where they need to be. In fact, myself, I want to see capacity. I want to see capacity being built in Nigerian youth. All right, I was talking to a friend of mine. A whole lot of awesome people have left Nigeria. When I was in the university, I know people. I know that this person is the future of Nigeria. This is a very, very brilliant guy. And in the future of tech, this guy will be a leader in the future. But they all left Nigeria because of the situations we are seeing around, right? Of course, Mitra will leave, but then I like to see capacity being built because whether we like it or not, we are the future of this country. We're the future of this country. We need to build capacities, right? A lot of people are into internet fraud. A lot of our ladies are into prostitution, right? I really, really hate to see that. I strongly believe that if more people step up and they take on the role of mentorship, they can lessen the amount of people that are into these things, right? And by giving us bad names worldwide, right? And I so much appreciate you, sir. I mean, the last time we spoke, I told you how I felt about all this, and I really, really have a lot of respect for you. If you have not followed Umar on Instagram, please go ahead and do that right now. Please go ahead and do that right now. Someone just asked a question in the chat section. Can I ask how much you visit the gym, sir? You look fit, and I love that.
Yeah, sure. I go to the gym every morning, 5 times a week. So every day. Well, 5 times a week, every morning is the first thing I do every day. So
that's awesome. You want to look jacked as well every day, 5 times a day. All right. Yes. Please don't worry. Our waiting group, we are going to drop his handles, right? Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We're going to drop it over there. Do you understand? How much capital do you need to start an app? I don't understand that question. Do you want to build it or do you want to learn how to build it? Please clarify. So thank you so much, sir. This is the end of this webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'll be in your DM.
absolutely.
I'll be in your DM. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys for having me.
So for the rest of us, we are done. Thank you for attending this webinar. I hope you've gotten so much value. The recording of this webinar will be made available, right? And I'm going to send the recording of this webinar to people that have followed Umar Abu on Instagram. You have to take a screenshot of you following him on Instagram and you send it to my DM. That is when I'll give you the recording. All right. I want every single person here to follow him. You're going to find his content very, very, very useful. Do you understand? Please do well to follow him on Instagram. God bless you, everyone. Bye-bye. You can start leaving now. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye. Good afternoon.